You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 116, Ian Gillan Band, live at the Rainbow, 1977. And coming to you from the technologically stalled suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John. Greek yogurt with honey Matola.
Okay. So we're back to you had some Greek honey with or Greek yogurt with honey.
Yeah, it's Greek honey. Yeah.
What was the honey? Was the honey Greek?
That's a great. I don't know. It might have been American. I don't know. From American bees.
Well, they say the domestic honey is what you really want to fight allergies. So. Because the bees have
let me just say it's a damn tasty dessert. Just a little, Greek yogurt, just a little honey over it.
You're so good.
Because
I
like
remember
plain Greek yogurt just tastes like nothing.
I remember when I was when my wife and I were unmarried and childless, living in New York, we would often have like a dessert of like vanilla yogurt with some honey or something on it. And now it's just like stuff as many mini cupcakes in my mouth as I can before I come down here to record or go to sleep. And it's, and if you compared my physique then and my physique now, it would not be a shock to hear that was the case. But there you go.
Well, I mean, I am a sweets lover, of course. But I mean, I try and control it. John Sweet, yeah, that's what I should have said. But I'm trying to, it's summertime, so we gotta make sure that we work on that summer body because I'm not. My usual philosophy is that I'm not sure how many cookies it takes to be happy, but I'm pretty sure that it's so far. I found out it's not 27.
So fewer than I've consumed today. In fact, the more I consume, the sadder I get. the more
That's actually true.
More regret and the more self-loathing involved. It's two bite cupcakes with me.
Isn't that the joy of dessert? It's supposed to make you happy, but it's just that it simultaneously makes you happy and full of self-loathing.
Self-loathing, nothing but self-loathing. And then when you should stop,
you're just like inside, like there's a part of you inside that feels good, but consciously, like you hate yourself as you're shoving the cupcakes in. Oh, I had
just taking them
a friend
with
had
one finger, just like pushing them into my gob.
No, like that would be funnier if it were a full-size cupcake. Like,
why not?
There was a thing over the weekend. One of my friends had a baby shower, and she was invited. All the friends. Usually it's traditionally I guess it's just the girls, but they invited like everybody.
You told me you were.
So so it was in a backyard. They had the table, it was bee themed. So everything was black and yellow. I thought it was at a Striper concert in the 80s.
A Striper themed baby shower. Or actually very fitting for today's episode, the black and yellow, right?
True. But they had the whole table set up, the cake and of course a little thing of cupcakes, and they were all like yellow with a little black kind of drizzle on it or whatever. It was chocolate. So of course I'm just all about the cupcakes. So I grabbed one, a friend of mine grabbed one when it was acceptable to. Like I was just ready to skip the burgers and go right for the cupcakes, but there's just like no, you gotta have some of the
dessert table. So what's going on over here?
Yeah, that's my MO. But and I'm surprised more people don't know about this. So we're sitting down, we're having the cupcake. So I cut the bottom off and flip it over and put it on top and turn it into a little cupcake sandwich. So the frosting is distributed in the middle and the cake is even on
You
both
make it almost
sides.
into like a whoopie pie.
Yeah, exactly. And like, my friend's wife was just like, she looked at me like I had just like, I had like discovered fire like in the primitive ages. She was like, oh, oh.
When they're pointing at you.
That's kind of how it sounded.
They start doing the same thing.
She like ripped she ripped the bottom off, and immediately she started eating like I did. But man, it was good. And they just like, so the girl came over who was hosting it, and she goes, "Oh, did you like the cupcakes?" I said, "Yeah." Guess where they were from? I said, "I don't know. Did you make them?" She goes, "No, Walmart." And I'm like, man, I don't even care. Those were damn good cupcakes.
That's one of those things that's good to get the information afterwards, because you would have prejudged them, but now you gave them like your honest shot. You're like, okay, you got me, Walmart. You got me.
Well, because people make this thing about, oh, if you get these cupcakes from like Walmart or BJ's or whatever, Costco, like they figure like, oh, it's just going to be this cheap like artificial taste and crap. I'd eat it all day. Nice. I don't care. Whatever they put in it makes it delicious.
Walmart cupcakes, folks.
It's probably anger and like unfair wages.
It's all the human suffering that goes into. Well, I don't know if it goes into the ingredients, but it goes into the low price paid for those cupcakes. Paid for by
they were good.
Human suffering.
Highly recommend. First chicken and waffles from Chili's and no cupcakes from Walmart. I'm just taking the culinary tour of
John's white trash culinary tips.
And I'm always
John's white trash culinary corner with John Matola. That would be a nice spin-off podcast.
Yeah, well, that might be a nice
guys. I got a great recipe for you. You take a can of cream of mushroom soup and some noodles, and you cook up some hamburg, and you put it all together, and you got a delicious treat.
Yeah, I call it beef stroganoff. It's a knockoff.
Stroganoff. Okay.
Beef, yeah, exactly.
Beef stroganoff.
Maybe the little Motley Crue dots over the O. But yeah, so I think that could be like a nice little segment at the beginning of the show, because yeah, here I am touting like, in earlier episodes, like, oh, I don't go to places like this. And already twice I've talked about going to like, chains and enjoying the food. Like I'm some kind of like
yeah.
liar.
I try to go to like the local mom and pop restaurants whenever I can. And then every time I talk to you, you're going to Chili's or eating Walmart cupcakes. You try is the key word. Well, you just fail. You don't actually deliver on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually do, but the thing is, it's not as much fun to talk about it because, there's no stigma attached to going to a great mom and pop place where there's like, a talented chef in there cooking from scratch. And so, wait a minute, that's not funny.
Well, the thing is, I mean, like with the mom and pop places, you're always taking a gamble, right? You don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. And if you go to some place like Chili's, it's like, you know what you're going to get. Whether you're on the East Coast, the West Coast, the center of the country, it doesn't matter. You know what you're going to get. If you've ever been to Chili's before.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean,
taking in the local cuisine, unless you've got some good local pointers or people to point you in the right direction, like, oh, you got to check this place out, then you're just taking a shot in the dark, and who knows? Or you could read 40 pages.
Well, I had gone to well, yeah, and usually I do. I mean, I was in Newport this Sunday, and my aunt and uncle had just bought a house down there, so I went down to
in Newport.
help them move some stuff. Newport, well, yeah, not the.
Why aren't they patrons?
No, I'm just gonna. No, it's
they're buying houses. Anybody buying houses in Newport should be donating to the show. Come on now.
Yeah, well, not the mansion part of it, but still a very nice neighborhood. But we went to, the street down there is called Broadway, which is like the less touristy part of Newport, but it's a nice kind of strip where there's like, all these outdoor cafes, restaurants are beautiful. So Sunday was beautiful. We went there in the morning for breakfast. So they brought the dog. We sat outside, we just picked a place with, oh, this looks good. Cause we haven't all been down there and familiar with it yet. And I was surprised, like the breakfast sucked. It was just like, it was so bland, like nothing had any flavor in it. It was like so disappointing. And because I love Sunday brunch or Sunday breakfast, and when it doesn't taste like anything, it's like even worse, because it's like, great, now I just like ate all this food and it didn't taste like anything.
Well,
So,
usually from somebody who comes from the restaurant business, they don't put the crack team usually on the
mhm.
brunch shift. It's kind of, well, either that or it's either the punishment shift, the shift for the newbies, or everyone
Mm.
on it's hung over from the night before. So you generally don't get it could be hit or miss depending on where you go. So
I don't know. Well, I mean, there it was definitely miss, and the worst part was is that a small place like that, I had gotten. I usually go savory. Now that I talk about how much I love sweets, but I usually go savory, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna get French toast,
mhm.
peanut butter and bananas. I think they call it like I don't know, the chunky monkey or something like that. Yeah, some monkey themed, thing because of have
Everything in
bananas in it.
Newport is monkey
And
themed.
I guess
My old restaurant was
I don't.
anyway.
I'm not sure, but but I mean the French toast, it didn't taste like anything. It was really bland. So I'm like, all right,
Mhm.
so a little, a little sprinkle of salt, and then I saw the bottle of syrup on there, and I'm like, ugh, pancake syrup, can't stand it. It's like
No,
that has no flavor as far as I'm concerned. So I'm like, I'll ask for maple syrup,
yeah,
real maple. I don't care if I got to pay
charge you
more. So I
$9.
said, but I would, and so I'm like, excuse me, do you have any maple syrup? And she just like, oh, she goes, all we have is that. She pointed to the bottle on the table of that friggin' crap, and I'm just like, all right,
Yeah, I mean
thanks. And I had to
you
like,
could pour the whole bottle on there, and it's just like, yeah, it doesn't taste like anything. It just has like a
yeah,
viscous
exactly.
sort of consistency, but it doesn't have any flavor.
Yeah, no, next time I'm gonna bring my own. I was gonna sneak my own maple syrup in.
A little flask. Glug glug glug.
Yeah, a little flask of maple syrup, BYOS.
Looking around. Well, hey, folks. You come to us once again for Deep Purple, and we once again talk to you about culinary nonsense. It's what we do. It's the way we give back. By hey, I've been listening to podcasts since podcasts came out. I've been listening to podcasts since there were like 10 podcasts that existed, and very early on, a lot of podcasts started running ads, and they'll run ads for. Sometimes they'll talk the ad themselves. Sometimes they just pump in an ad. But we don't do ads on our show. We don't force you to listen to a Dunkin' Donuts ad or whatever local ad populates from your, based on what area you're in. We are supported by our listeners, and that's something that's not unique, but special. Not all podcasts are able to do that. Thanks to amazing listeners who give us a little bit of their valuable money every month. We pump it right back into the show to try to make it better for all of you. We don't run any ads to pay for any of our costs. We just talk about our amazing patrons. And speaking of those patrons, heyo, we have a patron upgrade.
Oh,
Arthur Smith is upgrading from the $5 to the $6.66 tier. The once vacant tier is now getting a little crowded. So Arthur Smith's been with us
yeah.
pretty much since the very beginning, um, as a listener and someone who often comments and has a great dialogue with us on social media. We really appreciate that, Arthur. We appreciate you listening, appreciate your great feedback, and appreciate you being a patron. So thank you so much. And if you want to support the show, you can do so by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You could buy some merch at our Etsy store, or become a patron on Patreon or via PayPal for as little as $1 a month. You can be one of the members of the Hall of Heroes and help support the show. So we'll begin the show like we always do, thanking our executive level patrons. Coming in at the $20 Shades of Deep Pockets tier, we have Ryan M. At the $15 Highball Shooter tier, we have Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg. At the Turn It Up to $11 tier, we have Frank Thielgard Mortensen, Clay Wambacher, and Mikkel Steen. And at the $10 Someone Came tier, we have Steve Seaborg of NameOnAnything.com and AllTheWorldsOfStage.net, Jeff Bryce, Gerald Kelly, and Victor Campos. Thank you so much to all of you for all you do to support the Deep Purple podcast. And thanks to all of our friends at the Deep Dive Podcast Network who are continuing to put out great shows. If you like Iron Maiden, Queen, Black Sabbath, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Hawkwind, you name it, great interviews with T-Bone. Just check out the Deep Dive Podcast Network and see what makes all of those great shows so special. So this week, John was afraid it was going to be a subject that he wasn't looking forward to that we have coming up, but thankfully, it is not that subject, and it is the subject of something that we have not covered yet, which is the Ian Gillan Band live. We have covered all of their studio albums, all three of them, but we have never covered the band live. And today we have got an interesting little show about that, about the band live, and a little bit of background on it. So, John, what are you doing over there? He's like, he's crawling. I keep seeing. I look over. He's there. He's not there. He's.
Well, when you're doing the intros, I realized when we were trying to, when we were messing around with the audio setup, my the cable for my laptop had slipped, and sometimes halfway through the show it'll be running out of juice, and so I wanted to plug it in, and I realized it had fallen behind the desk, so I figured I got some time while he's talking.
And you did a great job doing that covertly, and you did it in time to come back, and I ruined it by calling it out and asking you what you're doing. So all of that hard work went to waste. So sorry about that.
All for nothing.
All for
That's all right. I'm just today's rodeo clown. That's all right.
So today's episode, we're covering Ian Gillan Band live in 1977. This is May 14th. They played at the Rainbow in London. So the Rainbow used to be the Finsbury Park Astoria, which is a large cinema complex in the 1930s. Had a big cafe, and in the 60s they began to use it for rock bands. And one of the biggest shows that they had there were bands from Stax and Volt label, who were the first ever large format American soul music concerts in the UK. So kind of a interesting part of the history there. It closed down in 1970, and they filled it with guard dogs to make sure that people weren't squatting there and living there. And then eventually the record label Chrysalis bought the venue, got rid of all the dogs, and improved it acoustically, and tried to amp it, or to soup it up to become the venue for rock bands in London. It was renamed the Rainbow, and the Who opened the new venue with its the venue's first show, not the Who's first show, but the venue's first show. It quickly became one of the best renowned venues for rock music in London. And eventually in 1975, Chrysalis pulled out because the expenses for the maintenance and new fire regulations and everything, they couldn't deal with it anymore. So they ran into money trouble. They had a huge bill of £180,000. Then a company in the next year called Hernweave, a company owned by Jamie and Lawrence Bloom, Alan Shriven, and Sean Casey, took over management of the theater. It shut down shortly thereafter, and then briefly opened in the 80s. But now it is owned by the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God. So there you go. It goes from kind of a cinema complex as part of a hotel to a rock venue to a house of worship. So there you go. Interesting fact about it: on June 30th, 1972, Deep Purple played there, and their noise level was recorded. And this was famously, as something we've talked about in the show before, earned them the name of the loudest band in the world. They entered in the Guinness Book of World Records in 1974 for being the loudest band on the planet. And it's something that the band really hated. Roger Glover, John Lord in interviews are always just like, oh, we hate that they did that, because it just kind of painted them painted a picture of them they didn't want out there. They didn't want to be some novelty like, oh, check, they're so loud. They wanted to be known for their musicianship. So something that they were not huge fans of. So, and then recently on June 4th, actually, so as of this recording, just 10 days ago, Live at the Rainbow was released on streaming services. So if you are interested in the show and want to listen to it without these two knuckleheads talking over it, and a better audio, I should say, too, because it's not from the video, you can listen to it on Spotify. I'll put the link in the show notes there. The show notes at deeppurplepodcast.com. And yeah, you can check it out. It's been available on and off on CD and DVD and various different forms for years, but it's just got released on the whatchamacallit, the streaming services, so you can check that out. So one of the interesting things about the show is it's billed as being a 34-minute show, although the video file is 32 and a half minutes. So I was kind of curious about that, and I was like, 34 minutes seems like a really short show. Were they just putting it on just to put it on? There's some information out there about it. So I wasn't sure. So I did what I always do. I dropped a note to Ray Fenwick and said, hey, what's the deal with the show? Like, why is it only 34 minutes? And he wrote back and said, the show was edited. A lot of the lengthy solos were shortened. It was a normal show, but Chris Blackwell, CEO of Island Records, was in the audience overseeing his new signing. So they had just signed to Island Records. I think they had just left Oyster, I believe, and gone to Island. And the Deep Purple record fanatics can correct what I got wrong about that. But as far as I remember, something along the lines of that. So they put on a normal show. Straps was the opening band, Mick Underwood's band, and it was a normal show with an opener, and they did a full set. But kind of much like the Butterfly Ball, it's like one of those head scratchers. Like we're just getting like a kind of a snippet of what they did live that night and not the whole show. There's a lot of misleading versions of it around. This is the version that I have. It's a DVD, and a lot of them with the track listings, it's kind of misleading because it says the first 7 songs, or I guess it's really 5 songs with an intro and outro, and then it says, oh, and all these songs are featured too. So I thought, oh, they played these songs live as well, but they just basically threw on like the album versions of these songs as like a bonus feature. So you like watch the DVD, and it's like one program on it is just you're watching like a reel to reel machine go, and you're hearing the songs from the album. So, I mean, I guess it's fine. I guess they had some, they had some space to fill, so they threw that on there. There's also an interview with Ian Gillan and an interview with Ray Fenwick on here, which is kind of interesting. So that's kind of where that is. In this liner notes, Ray Fenwick says, apart from many premier rock festivals we performed at, certain highlight concerts come to mind. One was a 2-night show at the Budokan in Tokyo. The other was at the Rainbow Theatre, Finsbury Park in London. So he considers this to be one of his a moment he was more proud of. So he says, it was on the 14th of May, 1977, in front of a full house. We were promoting Clearer Turbulence on Island Records, and Chris Blackwell, the label owner, was there checking out his investment. So before we move on, I will just share this quick little interview snippet with Ray Fenwick where he gives a little bit of background. It's just a couple minutes of what it was like being in the Ian Gillan band. So I'll play the first little brief intro, and we'll skip ahead to him just giving a little snippet of what life was like in the Ian Gillan band before we go on.
If it's on, I'm not seeing it. Nate, are you playing it?
So that's just him giving a little bit of background, and then we'll skip ahead to what he says just about the rock and roll lifestyle and being in the Ian Gillan band.
Hey, Nate.
Oh.
Hello.
Can you not hear it?
I can't hear or see anything.
You can't hear him?
Oh, no, I didn't. Nothing is on the screen for me.
Oh, well, here we go. Let's do it again. All right, so here we're gonna go. You can listen to that other part when you listen to the episode. Here, I'll start it at this. This is an interesting thing that happens with this new setup. Is the first time I share a screen with you, it doesn't work, but the second time it does. So here we go into the second part which you will be able to hear this time. So here we go.
Deep Purple as well.
And how did you take to the rock and roll lifestyle on the road?
Oh, great. I mean, the Gillan band was a wild band. I mean, we had Ian was a tax exile, and he lived in Paris. And I remember we were playing the Olympia, and we had to go over to Paris to rehearse because Ian couldn't come back because of the rules with the Inland Revenue. We had John Gustafson, who was a bit of a wild guy. Well, we all were. I can't really lay all the blame on John. You know, the rock and roll lifestyle affected all of us. But I remember pulling up outside the flat, the apartment in Paris. I'd come over on my own. And as I pulled up outside, I noticed glass everywhere and police. And I thought, what is going on here? So I went upstairs and like Ian's in there and he's in his pajama top it was, and a sort of a not a silk dressing gown, but a cotton dressing gown, as we say. I always remember that. And Ian's going, oh God. I said, what happened? He said, oh, Gus, you won't believe what happened. And somehow a chair had gone through the window, you see, crashed down into the street. Somebody had called the police, and they wanted the glass cleared up. They were not going to do it, the police. And unless the glass was cleared up, there was going to be some prosecutions. So I went into the room where Gus was, sound asleep, gone, out for the counts. They made Ian go down and clean it up. He went downstairs in this dressing gown, cleaning up glass in the street. And I thought, this is all over. You know, the band has just handed its notice in. Yeah. But the next morning he got over it. He saw the funny side of it. But there were a lot of wild moments like that. Read his book. It's got a lot of them in it.
So, little snapshot of what life was like. Although when you read his book too, it seems like John Gustafson was the source of all the stuff like that. Although there's a funny story about Ray Fenwick taking his pants off and sitting on somebody's hors d'oeuvre platter or something. It's kind of funny. Ian Gillan paints a very, very vivid picture of Ray Fenwick having an extremely hairy ass. He says he's one of the hairiest asses in the business or something like that. I should remember him saying that. I remember having that on my list of questions for when we talked to Ray, and I was like, nah, I'm gonna scratch that one off.
Oh,
not about his ass, but just about sitting on the plate of hors d'oeuvres. I was just like, is it true that you're really hairy?
oh.
No, but so anyway, that's a little snippet of what the day-to-day life was in the Ian Gillan band. So this is something that I only really discovered a few years ago, and there's really only 5 songs on it, but the first 2 are Clear Turbulence and Moneylender. So hearing them live I was like really kind of blown away. And then they go into their version of Child in Time, and then they also do their version obviously of Smoke on the Water and Woman from Tokyo, and you get to hear kind of with the spin that they put on those live. And if you're interested in Ian Gillan Band live, they also have a really good live album, Live at the Budokan, which is awesome. Much longer format, more of like a normal regular show. But this is interesting just because I thought it was video, and we're kind of doing this thing now where we alternate more like long form shows and some shorter episodes. So I figured, why not just tackle this early or this concert of a shorter concert of the Ian Gillan Band, and why not do it with a video? So there you have it. Are you ready to get into this video and see Ian Gillan in a really cool white suit?
Oh, baby. The John Travolta suit?
It doesn't look too far off. Although I think he must have darker pants. It's hard to... Yeah, I think he has darker pants on.
Or the Glenn Hughes suit? Or
it looks kind of like from the top up, almost looks like it could, from far away, it could look like the Glenn Hughes suit, but not quite as tight. And he's not going to have the whole thing unzipped by the end. So, all right. So before we get into it, though, of course, we have to thank our core level patrons. Coming in at the $6.60 episode, $6.66 tier, we have Richard Fusey, Steve Coldwell, and our upgraded patron, Arthur Smith. Thank you so much. At the $6.65 almost evil tier, we of course have Kenny Wymore. At the $5.99 nice price tier, we have Fielding Fowler and Dr. Jill Brees. And at the $5 moneylender tier, Greg Sealby, John Convery, German Heindel, Adrian Smith, Jesper Alman, Alexi the Perfect Stranger Slepikoff, James North, Mark Hodgetts, Kev Roberts, Will Porter, Zwapper the Electric Alchemist, and Tim Southern Cross Johnson. And at the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Gardeau, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, Andrew Meyer, Duncan Leask, and Stuart McCord. All right. So we're ready to get into this video. It opens up and closes with them doing Twin Exhausted, but it's kind of just like a snippet, like an intro and an outro, and then we'll hear the rest of the songs in entirety. So here we go. Ian Gillan Band live at Rainbow 1977. 80s looking production. Those are neon stills flying across the screen there.
Already sounds really good.
They're incredible live. They're kind of using just this little snippet as a intro video. So yeah, it's just wearing the white blazer, but it's a cool look.
And welcome the Ian Gillan Band.
And this is the Clear Air Turbulence tour, so of course they open with that. The sound quality on the DVD is not great, but the performance is great.
Yeah, it's okay. Kind of a curious opening tune. Way to open the show.
It opens the album though.
I guess, but it's like, I guess the way they came out, you know, I guess they weren't really too many frills. They just, you know, go right into it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it as an opening song for a concert.
It's one of those songs you wouldn't expect them to play live. It seems more like it would be a studio track.
But I mean, you know, still, like, you know, that's, aside from that, I mean, it sounds really good.
It's got to be a hard song to pull off live.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
They're nailing it. Gillan's voice is incredible.
Yeah, he sounded great.
I'd be losing my ever-loving mind if I was at the show seeing them play this live. He's got that Glenn Hughes thing going where he's like singing and he's blowing the hair out of his face while he's singing to the mic.
Yeah, I love it when they do live versions of songs like this, where it's like the quality of the musicianship is just like the record, but it's not exactly like it. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Like, I mean, you can tell they're really good musicians because they're like nailing like all the different parts.
Hard parts to nail. Johnny Gustafson.
Yeah, especially Gillan with the vocals.
I gotta learn this song on the bass. Such a great bass line. Whole bunch of congas behind Ian Gillan. He must have had some. Ray must have been telling the truth with those extended solos. I'm sure he went back there a few times.
Yeah.
Collins Towns made his way over to some synth in the background there. Ray Fenwick just gently strumming that guitar up on the neck like that.
Wow, fantastic.
A little different spin on this one. Mark Nausif is just killing it in that kit back there.
That's a cool version of this.
Looks like Ray Fenwick is wearing the... Mark Nausif's having a blast. Looks like Ray Fenwick is wearing the matching blazer to Coverdale's California Jam shirt. The same design on the sleeves. That stands. There's really just something to be said. There's not many bands that can pull all these songs off so well live. And like you said, it sounds almost exactly like the album.
I mean, it has a little bit of a different vibe. Like they're doing a really faithful version of it, but I like the guitar is like a little, got a really cool sound to it, like his live sound.
My only regret
But
is
either
not
way,
seeing
I mean, they're
more Johnny Gustafson in this one. He's not getting a lot of camera time.
I mean, geez, a live performance is killer. I mean, Gillan's voice on this night was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, he always delivered live. He was so good.
But, you know, sometimes he'll like, you know, he'll go off or he'll riff a little bit or maybe like, you know, miss a note because he's getting into it. You know, he just kind of, you know, is really raw. But I mean, this, he just seems to be really kind of sticking to the song, you know, not going off and doing too much other stuff.
Right. And Ray is doing some different things with the solos, but he's playing the main parts of the song very faithfully. Although the opening riff for this was a little different.
Which maybe Ian Gillan band that was like a little bit different than what you know, you would do in Deep Purple, you know?
Yep.
Because I mean, these guys were jam oriented too, but you know, the dynamic in Purple is different.
Yep.
But yeah, this seems like well choreographed. In a good way, of course. Jeez.
Gillan just looks like the coolest guy in town. Here we go with Child in Time.
Because he was.
That white jacket. And these are some of the
Tony
best...
Iommi to do the guest.
Yeah. These are some of the best studio musicians around, and proving that they can do just as well live.
Mm-hmm.
See all the sparkling percussion things hanging in the background.
All right, look at this. They really didn't spare any expense. You know, they could have gone out and like, you know, some bands leave all that studio stuff in the studio. Like these guys brought all the percussion, the flute. You know, they were coming to play. You know.
Yep.
And I like that. That's what I like about this is they're not doing like a live or stripped down version of the album version. They're going
apart from the horns in those two last songs, which honestly,
yeah.
As much as I love the horns in those two songs, you don't really miss them live. They covered all the bases well enough without them.
Yeah.
He's playing the drums with the mallets back there as Colin Townsend's playing the Fender Rhodes. Sweet child in time. I almost expected the crowd to start cheering when he said that, because a lot of them probably wouldn't have even known that that's what song this was.
Yeah.
Kind of like an MTV Unplugged. As soon as the singer starts singing, they all start cheering.
This is probably going to be one of my favorite songs where I love both the original and the reworked version of it. Like, just as much.
I'm
like,
surprised
actually, sometimes this version edges out the original for me sometimes.
It's really
if I'm in the mood.
And I expect whenever this song comes up, I expect people to trash it, but I often hear people give this song a lot of credit, which is, you know, you expect it to be sacrilege because the original is such a highly regarded Gillan classic.
Yeah, but I mean, what they do with it in this version is it's brilliant.
And it's great. It's Ian Gillan saying, you know, I'm striking out on my own, but I'm taking my song and I'm putting my own spin on it. And it gets rid of any sort of plagiarism problems that they would have had with the original, you know, because they completely rewrote the. If you just listen to this song instrumental with no vocals, you would have no idea that this was even the song they were going for.
No. But I mean, that also is kind of a testament to like what a great song it is, just like what a well-written song it is in general.
Yep.
Because I mean, you know, you could rearrange a shitty song and it's still gonna be shitty, you know.
I love Fenwick's tone on that solo, even though it's again not the best audio quality on this video, but it just, you could tell it sounds great.
I love how he's like gently just strumming up by the neck like that with that circular motion.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot of that. love Ray matching him on the guitar there.
Yeah, that's some good stuff.
Somewhere out there exists this entire concert film. You need to release the whole thing. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of market for Ian Gillan band stuff outside of this show. Somebody in the audience got their little moment of fame. Hey! You know, somebody's like, that was me! I was the one that did that! I was reading the other day, like Mark Nossif wasn't somebody who was... He was well known for his percussion, but he wasn't often playing a full kit. And I love what he does. I mean, he's such an integral part of Ian Gillan Band's sound. All the percussion elements that he brings in, it really makes Ian Gillan Band something special.
Yeah, no, yeah, good point. Never really thought about it, but yeah, their music is very like percussive in terms of like, you know, there's a lot going on there, a lot of little touches.
And all of them obviously lend something special. Colin Towns, like the little arrangements and things he does with the synths, but then Mark Nossif gives it that real atmospheric sound on all of those albums. Just the things that he does with, because look at his drum set. It's like a small little drum set surrounded by every percussion thing imaginable. Cymbals, there's a big gong behind him, rototoms, a bucket of little things like that thing that goes that I always forget the name of. Singing so far away from the mic.
Yeah, because if he was close to it, it'd be blowing everybody's eardrums out, probably.
See, like, Mark Nossif's now standing up, hitting the chimes and those little rototoms behind him.
Wow.
Now you get to hear two unrecorded, studio anyway, versions of Deep Purple classic, starting with Smoke on the Water. But it's really cool how they...
It'll be interesting to see how they do this.
When you hear him do this with Sabbath, it's real straightforward. Gillan's going crazy. But when he does it with the Ian Gillan Band, they make it an Ian Gillan Band song. Same thing with The Woman from Tokyo.
Oh, look, the crowd's going nuts. The song's like 5 years old and people are already going nuts for it.
I wonder if anybody in that crowd listens to the show. They'll have to write in and tell us. They're like headbanging and going crazy.
I really like what they're doing with it. It's so funny. They're not really doing too much different with it, but you can tell it's an Ian Gillan Band song. They're all putting their stamp on it.
Yeah, it's like they aren't, but
This
they
is
are.
great. like they're throwing a little swing in there, you know? There's like a little more groove than in the original.
Yeah, and I probably won't be too surprising for listeners to hear that I actually like this version better.
Well, I mean, you think about it, there are some of these Purple songs that you hear the same studio and even like made in Japan version over and over again, and it's the same thing you've heard on the radio in your whole life. So when there's a different version done, you know, with, you know, one of the original guys, you know, it makes it fresh.
Like
and that's a good thing.
Our Smoke on the Water episode, we played that version that Deep Purple did on, I think it was like French TV or something, where they did like a little jazz version of the song, and it was just like, oh, it really makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah. See, and maybe that's one area where, you know, Mark III, you know, kind of dropped the ball. Is they could have made Smoke on the Water. They could have arranged it a little differently for like Coverdale and Hughes, but instead they tried to just go full on, and it didn't really work.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, he saved probably why they wouldn't, because I mean, you know, they're still Deep Purple, you know, so they would, you know, not want to do too much of a different version of it, but still, that would have been interesting to see if they kind of tailored it to the other guys a little bit. Fenwick is kind of sticking to.
He's keeping it pretty accessible.
Sticking to the solo a little bit. Oh, and they went somewhere else.
Finger picking all over the place here. You're turning it into a hoedown.
I spoke too soon.
I mean, I know I'm not the best. This is great. I'm probably not the best person to go to for this, but I would be so much happier if bands did more of this stuff. I mean, I guess you want to, like you said, people are going to want to hear it more like it sounds like, but to me this is just so much more interesting. If I want to hear exactly what it sounds like, I can just put the album on.
Right.
And I don't really ever want to hear Smoke on the Water like it sounds like ever again, because I've heard enough.
But I mean, I guess that's what also going out solo with another band affords somebody like Ian Gillan to have done, is to just be like, hey, I don't have to do it the traditional way that we wrote it.
I think Ray Fenwick is just working.
And that wasn't what this band was about anyways.
Ray Fenwick is making this crowd his. Got him in the palm of his hand. And this sounds like 1977, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of sounds like a little envelope filter on the bass in the background. It sounds kind of like a little more funky. The crowd is still going absolutely nuts. Like, I almost wonder if they just took all those people in the first row and are like, listen guys, we're filming this, so go all out when we hit Smoke on the Water, because
they might.
I mean, I'm sure they're just into it, but wow. Doesn't look like they're faking it though. They look like they're going out of their minds.
See, now I'll bet you that if Mark III had done this version and just Hughes had sang it, this would have suited him, I feel.
Oh yeah. It certainly would have been a lot better. That's kind of
just an idea.
Of the Mark III live shows, like hearing them do Smoke on the Water, I was like, oh, I don't even really want to hear Mark II do Smoke on the Water. Never mind. Mark III.
Well, that was actually one of the most disappointing things for me. Like when the first time I saw like California Jam was just like hearing like that new version of the band do like the Mark II songs and just being like, they're not really hitting it that good.
No, and they could have done just something else off of Burn. It would have been so much. I mean, I get why they had to do it.
Yeah. But this, back to this performance, wow. Woo! I'm cheering.
Keep holding.
Here's another one.
Here's another one.
Yeah, they really did cut down the jams and the between song banter.
Yeah, not a lot of banter.
It's like, wow. They're just like, wow, Ian's stage raps suck. Here's another one.
The crowd's still going nuts. It's like, did they just like hand out PCP to everyone in the front, like 5 rows, and just like, go at it, man. Fenwick and Gustafsson, I'm back in.
Even this is great. Yeah, it sounds like they got some gang vocals going on in the background. And a little more kind of like funky and percussive verse again.
Yep.
This is really good.
And he's not even doing that little like Ritchie riff either. They're just kind of keeping it more simple.
Yeah.
He just like found something on stage and put it in his pocket. I don't know what that was. He's like, oh, I want that.
We'll never know. We'll never know.
If we ever have Ian on the show, we'll just play him this clip and say, Ian, do you remember what you picked up off the stage and put in your pocket? Gillan's giving some direction to the band there. He still does that. He still does that thing where he points like that on beat, like he.
Yeah.
It's like 40
it looks a lot funnier now because he's really he's a lot older.
He does that thing. There's this video that always pops up for me, like where he's like wiping his face, and then he's with a band. I forget who, but I think he's knocking at your back door, and he just starts pointing at the same exact way. He points at the keyboard player, and.
Well, I mean, cool in your 30s, but when you're 70 something, you look like a deranged old grandpa doing it.
Kooky Uncle Ian.
Kooky Uncle Ian.
And you gotta love this band. Like, they've got Johnny Gustafsson and Ray Fenwick, both who are lead vocalists in their own right, on backing vocals.
Really, I mean, you just have a stage full of virtuosos up there. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
Ian Gillan was not surrounding himself with any hacks here.
No, far from it.
He never really did. Whoa. Oh, somebody turned up the volume on the bass at the end.
At the very end. Whoa!
God bless you. You're amazing. Thank you from all of us. It's truly fantastic. We'll see you again.
So there must have been like Smoke on the Water and Woman from Tokyo must have been like an encore or something.
Yeah.
Hey! 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 God bless you. You're great. Good night. Woo!
There you go. Roll credits. Hey, Louis Austin on sound. This kid who was the guy who did Butterfly Ball and Natural Magic and all that stuff that we talked about recently.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Directed by Keith.
Who's Keith?
Keith Hartley? I don't know. There you go. Now we'll add at the end here. It was really only about 31 minutes or so. Giving you a little... It's funny, it's showing you a CD that doesn't actually look like a CD. It's like the thickest CD you've ever seen. It looks like the thickness of a cassette. Like, have they ever seen a CD? That's
like
what a
the
CD
Ian
looks
Gillan,
like.
the Ian Gillan Bible, you know, like.
It's a real... It's like a
How
9
thick it
CD
is. It looks
set
like-
or...
Yeah.
It's reminding me of how good a song Twin Exhausted is. Would have been great to have more of that. But anyway, that's the show. Any before we part and thank our patrons, what's your take on seeing Ian Gillan band live?
I could have watched like another like 5 songs of that. Like that was too short.
Yeah.
That was like way too short. I could have watched like the whole concert. Like I don't know how many songs they cut out of it, but I mean, I could have watched like however many songs they did, I could have watched like twice as many as that. Like it was really, really enjoyable. I mean, yeah, I mean, you said that the sound wasn't like, I mean, yeah, the sound wasn't like pristine, but I mean, I think it was like definitely good enough, you know. I mean, it was I mean, the performances were really just outstanding, and the versions of the songs they did, the Ian Gillan band songs just sounded like spot on.
Yep.
And the Deep Purple songs, because I mean, let's not forget the Child in Time was one too, even though they did a completely different arrangement. There was like 3 Purple songs, but I mean, all of those had their own stamp on it, and they were all like, they all worked, you know, because they were, I feel that they were not only on that night, but like we were just saying, you have like what was it, 5 guys in the band? Yeah, 5, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you got like 5 virtuosos up there. Like you said, you have Ian Gillan, you got 2 other guys that are like also lead singers doing background vocals.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's like how, like, you know what I mean? They trotted out like, you know, everything, the flute, the percussion, like all the keyboard effects, you know, everything but the horns, you know. And I mean, it was not a huge production either. You could tell it was like kind of a smaller venue, you know. It wasn't like a stadium or anything. I mean, it's like, wow, what a show to have been at, you know. That's something that I like. When I see that, I'm like, that's what I would like love to see or love to have seen live. So yeah,
that's
great show.
That would have been an amazing show to be at. And
yeah,
that, you know, that's the Rainbow. That's like the famous rainbow that Rainbow is named after. It's an amazing venue with amazing history, and I like we said, you've got John Gustafson and Ray Fenwick, who are lead singers and were lead singers in other bands outside of Ian Gillan band, doing background vocals. Although Johnny Gustafson live would often get a song or two to sing, and he sang one on one of the albums. I love his voice. I love everything about Johnny Gustafson. His playing, his writing, his voice is just incredible. And same thing with Ray Fenwick. And then you've got Colin Towns and Mark Nossi. Again, it's such an oddball band, and I know it gets crapped on all the time. Like, oh, then Ian Gillan did his stupid fusion stuff, and then people just gloss over it, and then they like Gillan better, the band Gillan, which I like as well. But Gillan is more of a straight ahead rock band. And
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I respectfully disagree with anybody that says that. I think that this was outstanding.
mhm. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I've had to come to terms with over the years the fact that just people don't view this kind of music the same way that I do, as far as like, I don't know, like the funky part of it. Like, I'm, everyone that
Yeah.
listens to the show or knows me outside of the show and has never listened to the show knows that I'm like, love like funky stuff, like funky music and stuff that's got like a real groove to it. And a lot of people just like more of like straight ahead rock. And I like that too, but I always like stuff like this. I will always prefer it and have more of a fondness for it than I will for um, stuff that's just straight ahead. So I like, and again, I like weirder stuff and weirder arrangements. You've got stuff like Zappa that I like a lot of Zappa. Some of it goes too far for me. It's too far off the beaten path, too out
Yeah.
there for me. But I do like things more straight ahead and more of kind of a. I don't like things that are maybe more technical or like math rock. That stuff can throw me a little bit, but I do like things that are just non-standard arrangements and more interesting stuff like that. So that's, I think, why I've always gravitated towards this. We've talked about this on our episode on Clearer Turbulence. I forgot what episode number that was, but I'll never forget hearing that album for the first time. You taking out, I don't know if it was a CD or if you were on cassettes still at the time. You were probably still doing cassettes.
It was probably still cassettes. Yeah.
But you introduced me to that album, and the first time I saw the album cover, I was just like, this is what Ian Gillan did after Deep Purple. And putting it on and just hearing what it sounded like and looking at that album cover and looking through the whatever, probably super limited liner notes, and just, it took me to like, no pun intended because of the album cover, but it was like getting in a spaceship and going to a different world, like, that I never knew existed. And it's always done that for me. So to hear that album and then to hear them doing those first two songs live is just incredible. The first time that I saw this, again, it was, in the last few years when I saw it for the first time, and I haven't watched it in a while, but it's just like you said, I could easily go for seeing that whole show, and it's a shame it's not on there. One thing, so the DVD, if you want to get it, which I highly suggest you do, it's really, really good. It's got that show that we just watched. It's got an interview with Ray Fenwick, short, like 6-minute interview, an 8-minute interview with Ian Gillan. Then it's got all these rarities, which, you can just, if you've got a DVD player, you can just pop it on and listen to them or whatever songs. And then interestingly, it's got basically an ad that's longer than the concert comes in at 32 minutes and 34 seconds. And then it has a 36-minute and 13-second ad. That's just an ad for all these other videos that this is Angel Airwaves has put out. And if you open this up, you can see kind of on the inside of the DVD, it's got these little snapshots of what all the other DVDs are. There's live concerts from Trogs, Coliseum reunion. What else do they got? T-Rex, Hard in New York. They call it Hard in New York, the Wind in the Willows concert, which is a really good one that I'd recommend. A live Spencer Davis thing, Roger Chapman doing Family and Friends. What else they got there? Gillan live in 1980. Tigers of Panzang, all this other stuff that's from there, but a lot of them, Coliseum, Hard in New York, a lot of them have Deep Purple connections. So some pretty interesting stuff. And I've seen that Wind in the Willows, which is really cool. Speaking of Ray Fenwick, it opens up with like a 4-minute Ray Fenwick guitar solo, and then goes into this, Eddie Hardin butterfly ball-esque craziness with Don Airey and John Lord and Peter York and all these other greats. It's a really weird but very cool thing that we'll have to cover one day. Tony Ashton, I think Tony Ashton's on it. I don't know if he's on the live concert, but it's an interesting one. It's kind of like Butterfly Ball. There's a live album and a concert album to go along with it. So But anyway, that's my advertisement for buying this Ian Gillan Band DVD. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, very cool.
So before we break it off tonight, we of course have to thank, if I can find the spreadsheet here. I'm going with 3 computers today.
You've been saying that the past couple of episodes, breaking up, breaking off,
breaking in, breaking bad. We're gonna do it all.
All right. When we get together, we'll be breaking bread.
Exactly. There you go. We've got our foundation level patrons to thank. We've got at the $1 made up name tier, L's Murders, Spacey Noodles, the Unfettered Leaky Mausoleum, Michael Vader, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, Raf Calf, Spike the Rock Cat, JJ Stenard, Hank the Tank, and Flight of the Rat Bat Blue Light. Thank you to all of you for making the show special with your fun names and your support for the Deep Purple podcast. We really appreciate it. So one thing, so there's a CD to go along with this too. It's very short because it's only got those 5 songs on it, or 6 songs or whatever it is. You can get that as well. And on the liner notes, Claes Johansson, which I hope I'm pronouncing their name right, says, though considered terribly unfashionable in their day, the Ian Gillan Band of the mid to late 70s remains one of the few non-new wave / punk bands of the era who were able to produce music which still remains interesting and intriguing. I suggest you offer yourself the opportunity to find out just how good they really were on stage. And I don't really think you could sum it up any better than that, because they were fantastic. And it's great. I always kind of enjoy watching live music more than listening to it. So I really enjoy this one. But one day we'll have to kind of circle back and cover the live at the Budokan, because that is an amazing performance, but it is audio only. So there you go. And if you are looking for more information on this, of course, in our show notes, I was going to call them wonderful, but I didn't want to toot my own horn, but they are wonderful. I'll have links to all the resources we use to kind of talk about this one, about this particular recording. Lots of great stuff, including the CD liner notes, some Wikipedia stuff. There's a Rainbow History website that talks about the Rainbow Theater if you're interested in that. So you can check out that for some more information. So with that, it'll be until next week. Next week, we're going to cover a full album. But what's that album going to be? Who knows? Do you know?
I might know.
He looks upset.
I'm already looking. I'm exhausted already.
Twin exhausted.
That'll give you a clue. I'm twin exhausted. Yeah. So if anybody can guess, I don't know. I mean, we already did. I don't know. What was that? What's that album that I don't like?
Warhorse.
Yeah. I love how you got it on the first try. You're like, well, you don't like a few albums. Yeah, it's not Warhorse, but I mean, it might. I feel this might come in a close second. We'll
it might
see.
It might be Warhorse-esque. We'll see. We'll see next week when we get to it, which could be fun.
Leave in the comments what you think it'll be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a lot of listeners tend to really enjoy when you are unhappy with the music. So, and yeah, rightly so. It can be funny. So,
well, so yeah, I mean, it's a lot more interesting when you those are some of my favorite podcast episodes. Like, is when when the reviewers, at least one of them, just really dislikes an album, because it's not only funny, but it's an opposing viewpoint. It's not just like a big like love fest where everybody's like, oh, it's so great, even though those are good too, because if you like it, then you're listening along, you're like, yeah.
And honestly, we haven't done too many episodes where we haven't been where we've been very negative. I mean, and that's kind of the point of the show. We try to come across and find the good in all the associated acts and things, but there's not a ton of episodes where we're just like, oh, this is unredeemable, or this is tough to listen to, or whatever. But there are a few here and there, which again, we try to look at it from what its contribution is to the greater Deep Purple family, and try to come to it with a positive attitude. So
yes,
we'll see what next week brings. All right, John.
All right, Nate.
I will talk to you next week.
Next week.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.